Today's guest, we just had to interrupt our little love fest on our video chat because we just really enjoy working together, and his knowledge is so helpful to our audience. Here he is. So Charlie is going to introduce. He is a member of the Been There, Got Out Club. He has dealt himself. He has intimate knowledge of all things regarding alienation and kids being weaponized and turned against another parent, especially pre, during, and post separation. And so the other day, Charlie, welcome for thanks for coming. I saw your amazing posts about gifts, and so I thought, let's definitely get together and do a short conversation, if that's possible for either of us, to have a short conversation before I start work, and before you end your day, because you're hours ahead of me. But I wanted you to talk about that post and gifts and when things are not received for a variety of reasons. But before we even start, can you officially introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me back again, Lisa. And as you say, we just love working together. I mean, we think that everything that you guys do is just amazing and fantastic.
Right.
And yes, I'm Charlie McCready. I am a parental alienation coach. I have been through this personally. I've been enduring pre-alienation and then post-alienation for about 25 years, one way or another. And I'm married to somebody, Emma Godden, who is a wonderful person as well. She's also been through alienation with 2 kids. So between us, we've been alienated step-parents, alienated parents. We've kind of covered all the bases. And we help parents navigate this whole challenging issue of alienation all the time.
Yeah, and before we even start, I know some people don't believe this exists, but for us, dealing with only high conflict, men and women all over the world, this is, next to the legal abuse of the family court system, this is the #1 issue that our clients deal with. Again, men and women. We already know that people who abuse others commit psychological and emotional abuse, and so if they do it to you, why wouldn't they do it to your kids?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's such a pity that this isn't formally recognized, because if it was, a lot of the issues that we are currently facing today as alienated parents would just disappear. And I mean, it's something like, in the States alone, the stats that have been done is 22 million people are affected by this. I mean, this is an astronomical number.
Right. I've heard 1 in 3 divorced parents say that they've experienced some form of this.
Yeah, I can believe that. And I think, yeah, the stats might be going higher and higher, the more research is done, and we come to appreciate just how much abuse is kind of quietly going on in the background.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things for parents, because I think I might have said this before when we talked, but for a parent who has a child who has died, the community rallies around them with support. For a person whose child has been turned against them and doesn't communicate with them anymore, there's this shame, because there's all kinds of judgment, like, you must have done something wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's an interesting connection, just before we get into the gifts, there's an interesting connection with bereavement and alienation, just as you've talked about, because also the people around you, they understand bereavement. They know what to do. They know how to support you. They know how to step in, just be generally helpful. But with alienation, the people around us don't understand it. So our friends don't get it. Our families don't get it. The people in our workplace, the courts, the lawyers, the psychologists, like, nobody gets this stuff. And so instead of having the support network around you, exactly as you say, you have all these people criticizing you.
Right.
And not only are you lacking the support, but you're the only person who's typically giving yourself the support. So you have to help yourself. Then you have to help your kids, then you have to help your family, you have to help your partners, for those who've gone to new relationships. And it's like, it's so unfair. We are the foundation stone that's got to look after ourselves and then look after everybody else as well.
Yeah, I find also, yeah, astonishment that people cannot believe that a child that they spent years pouring love into and raising, that this would ever happen. We hear that all the time. It's like, I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah, and the speed and the perceived speed at which this happens because what they often don't realize is that there's this long period of what I call pre-alienation, where the alienating parent has decided either the relationship's coming to the end or is just kind of getting the kids to align with them anyway. But they undermine us, our characters, who we are, our relationships. And when I was talking about personal experience of 25 years, I had a decade of my ex undermining my relationship without really realizing what was going on. And so when we did separate, and this happens with a lot of people as well, when you separate, that's when the real pressure comes on the kids, and the kids can change in what seems like, a few hours or a few days. But really, the foundations for that have been laid for years in advance.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to talk about this, so that when you see what's happening, you can start planning what to do properly, legally, and in your personal relationships with your children.
Yeah, and also just in your own mental and kind of emotional state, because I think that's one area that parents give way too little time to. They're always looking at dealing with the court systems or trying to help their children, and they don't spend enough time on themselves, forgetting that they're the thing that is going to help their kid the most.
Yeah, and this is such a huge topic. And so, Charlie, I think I told you our current book is called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. And I'm sure you can imagine, but and I'll tell you officially, like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in our interviews, you are in it. You are
Wonderful.
all over our book. So your information is so helpful. And I think, like I said, it's essential in educating people, like you said, to take care of their kids, their relationships, but especially themselves, and knowing how to properly deal with it before it gets worse.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long journey as well.
Yeah.
But should we cover gifts and
Yeah.
then
So
see
tell us
what
the
time is left,
scenario.
how much time you've got left, and then we can, because there's so much in this area that we can talk
I know.
about.
Okay. So gifts. So a big thing that I think both of us see is when a parent has been turned against a child, the child doesn't have contact or has little contact, they give gifts and letters, and what happens?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's worth just reminding people that the alienating parent hates us, and anything associated with us they also hate. So it's not just cutting the kids out of our lives, but they don't want reminders of us in their homes. So when we send gifts to the children, not only are we trying to kind of rebuild the relationship with our kids, which they're trying to stop, which the alienated parent is trying to stop, but then this gift now provides this kind of constant reminder of us in their home, and they want nothing to do with us in their homes. So very often, a lot of the gifts that they disappear, and they get intercepted, especially if the children are younger. They often get intercepted by the alienated parents. Sometimes they just get hidden. If the gift is received, then often it's taken away from the child, or the child is not encouraged not to play with it. Or very often the child just feels an enormous amount of pressure in receiving the gift. So one of the things I would say to parents is be very careful about the unintended consequences of the gifts that you are giving, depending on your circumstances. And also think about the fact that it's probably going to get thrown out, because parents want to overcompensate quite often because their child's not in their life, so they'll buy an expensive gift. And I would encourage you, you might feel mean in your heart, buy something that's cheaper on the basis that the child receives something, recognizes you've not given up on them, recognizes you've given them something. Don't make it too cheap so you can be criticized for it, but don't buy something too expensive.
Well, you'll be criticized anyway, right?
You're going to be criticized anyway, but work on the basis it's probably going to get binned, and it might never be opened. So don't spend $100 on it. Spend $20-$30 on it. Just be sensible. The other thing, which was in the post, is the idea of preparing. If you think that these gifts are never going to be received by your child, write a letter, write a birthday card, Christmas card, Thanksgiving, whatever, to the child, but keep it yourself.
Okay, now why? Why would I write a card and keep it?
Because it helps you cathartically to actually write the card as if your child is there and able to receive it. So it means that you kind of don't feel that you're being alienated as much as you really are. So it gives you an opportunity to imagine what the relationship is like, the way you want it to be. but then you keep it to the point in time you do have the relationship back with the child, and then you can share these things with them if it is appropriate. And that's a very important point. Sometimes when you're rebuilding relationships with the kids, they don't want to go into the past, so they might never ever open these presents, but they are there if they are more receptive. And then you can say, look, I've got this great big cupboard full of presents that I bought for every birthday, every event, graduations, whatever, that I missed. I never forgot about you.
Yeah, because they're getting another story from your ex, right?
Yeah, so basically the ex is intercepting the present and will then say, oh, it was never sent. And then they'll continue the narrative of, that we've abandoned them, which is not true. Another thing that you can do, which I think is really helpful, because it's like date stamped, just put money in the account.
Really?
Open up a deposit account for them, and every time it's their birthday, because it's not like a present that you buy that they might not want in a few years' time, and then it's going
Right.
to waste, or a present that they've outgrown. Because we want to lavish on them to the extent we can. So put a couple of $100 into an account somewhere. But each time you put the money in, it'll be recorded when you put it in. So when they go back and look at bank statements, if they wanted to do that, they'll say, oh yeah, on each of the anniversaries of my birthday or Christmas or whatever the event is, money went in.
Now, Charlie, with that account, sorry, when do you set it up? Like, let's say you didn't set it up while you were still in contact with them, and then you set it up. How are they going to know that this is happening, or you do it regardless?
They won't know. If you have no contact with them, they won't know until you have the opportunity to tell them about the account. If you do still have contact with them, you can set it up and you can let them know that you're putting money into this account. It's like you don't have access to it. If you do have contact with them, you can give them the only access to the account. So like there's no doubt about who's got access, who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You just put the money in, and it's up to them as to whether or not they take the money out. But kids, if they see a couple of $100 going in, they kind of would rather take it out than not. Or if they see it building up to like 1,000 or 2,000, the desire to access it will only increase over time.
Yeah, yeah. So you had shared a story in your post the other day about this cupboard, or we say closet,
Yeah.
full of presents. Like, can you share what happened?
Yeah, so in this case, it was my wife Emma. She had two kids who were over in Australia, and they were only able to come across intermittently, and her ex was finding various reasons as to why the children couldn't come across, and so she literally was she was buying presents and writing cards and putting them, storing them in a cupboard, and then on the odd occasion that they did come across and visited us, then she was able to show them and said, look, here are all the things that I bought for you, and let them open them, and let them see that they had never been forgotten about, and let them, very often they didn't want to take the presents back with them unless it was something that they could, a piece of jewelry is a lot easier for a young girl to hide, for instance, than something that's more obvious, or a bigger present. Big toys, stuff like that. It's kind of hard for the kids to hide. But if they've got something that's more personal, that they can make it's less obvious to the alienating parent that they've received this gift, then that's something that's much more likely to be received. Sorry, it's much more likely to be something that could be used by our kids.
Yeah,
And
it's so sad about having a child having to hide things.
Yeah, but it's also a good indicator of, if you, as your relationship develops, it's kind of easier with girls, for instance, with jewelry, just as an example, because if you give them something that, a bracelet, if they then continue to wear that bracelet in the future, when you meet them, or if you believe they're wearing the bracelet just anyway, it's almost like them showing signs of independence from the alienating parent, that they're kind of standing up to them a little bit.
That's really interesting. I thought you were going to say that it shows that they still feel somehow connected with you. They're not disposing everything related to you.
Yeah, I mean, they will, yeah, they will absolutely feel that as well. So it's a sense of, that connection. But it's also this sense of independence. And I think it's always worth iterating to parents that even when you do, if even in a position of no contact, the vast majority of parents end up rebuilding relationships with their kids. It's more a question of when you get that opportunity to do it rather than if. And there are people who, unfortunately, will go through long periods of no contact or might never rebuild relationships with their kids. But the people who don't rebuild tend to be in the minority. So for most people, who are listening today, hopefully you're in that majority who will at some point be able to restore your kids.
Is there an age or a period of life? No. Okay.
There is. It happens at any point in time. So you really need to be, and this is one of the key lessons for the parents, you need to be ready now for whatever might happen at whatever point in time. And when I say be ready, you need to be understanding alienation. You need to understand what your kid has experienced, seeing the world through their eyes, why they are behaving the way they are, because they're just coping mechanisms, and also yourself. Because if you're not healed and you're introduced to your kid again, you're trying to rebuild that relationship, all of your old hurt and wounds, for instance, the need to correct the record, I didn't do this, your mum or your dad's been lying about me, as soon as we go back into those conversations with our kids, we're holding them in the loyalty conflict, which is the place they don't want to be. So we have to be healed. So it's like we have to take that opportunity during that no contact phase, or even if we do have contact, immediately start working on us and our kids. But in terms of when does it happen, I mean, there are examples of one family that I was working with recently. Their son, they hadn't seen him, a young teenager, they hadn't seen him in 18 months. And what they didn't know is that in the background, he was becoming really unsettled with his mum. And his dad reached out to him as he did regularly, which is why we say keep on reaching out to kids. One of his regular reach outs, he said, "Would you like to go fishing?" And this time the kid said yes. So they went fishing for a day. And what the kid was doing is he was testing to see if it was safe for him to come back and live with his dad again.
Wow.
It wasn't a case of, just rebuilding the relationship slowly. The kid moved in lock, stock and barrel 1 week later.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
that was,
we've seen that also.
yeah.
So there's a comment by someone that I think both of us sort of know through social media. And he said that when his daughter turned 21, he gifted her his sacred Harley Davidson motorcycle leather jacket that he'd gotten from his mom 35 years before, but he had to ask his daughter to leave it at his house. What do you think of that? Because he knew it would disappear. We know that. But
I think that's being sensible. Although you want your child to have it, I think until the point in time that they've got their own independence, their own space to live in, basically their own house, I wouldn't risk anything that's really valuable being sent across to the alienator's home. Passports disappear, stuff that's, as I say, anything associated with us tends to disappear. I was
yeah,
just very quickly back on the age thing again. What often happens with a lot of kids when they get up to being sort of 18 to early 20s, that can often be a time we see a little bit more movement with them because they're a little bit older, they're a little bit more independent. Quite often they're going to college or they're going off to a university. And if they move out of the home in those environments, then they're no longer being monitored in the same way that they were at home. So
mhm,
instead of just receiving texts, they might start answering texts. They might start having phone calls. They might be prepared to actually meet you. So we often see a lot of movement happening in that kind of 18 to early 20s range. But again,
yep,
there's no guarantees. I mean, some kids, they're not even kids. Some adults get alienated in their late 20s or early 30s,
yeah,
which shows this pre-alienation how powerful it can be, even on people that we would say, well, you're no longer a kid, you're an adult.
yeah. There's so much I want to talk about, but we we don't have time. But we're going to keep jumping on, please, and discussing little aspects of this. The thing about the gifts is really really helpful because it happens all the time, and you feel like, what am I supposed to do? Like, my kid thinks I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's the most important thing. As best you can, keep giving them, well, keep going through the act of giving them presents. To say, put it in a bank account, physically send them some stuff. You know, you might want to just send them something as a memento to their house, knowing it's going to get intercepted, or store it, especially if when they're getting a bit older. You can buy more expensive presents that will be kind of age appropriate as they continue to get older. As they do get older, what some parents also do as well is once the kids move out of the home, and this is for the kind of the no contact kids, very often parents have found what has worked for them is the kids moved out of the home, and they would just go and leave that present, you know, outside their house. Sometimes parents also use PO boxes, or they get the kids to go down to the post office to collect a present.
Yeah. You know, as you're saying this, it's making me think of something that we talk about in our book in terms of the legal aspect of it, is you want to also document your attempts to communicate with your child. So maybe if you're going to drop it off at the house, take a picture, which has that time and date stamp. If you're going to send a card, take a picture of it, just so you have it for your legal records as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think anything that you can do like that will help. And also, yeah, the one caveat with this, as I say, is when you start rebuilding relationships with your child, they typically want to operate in the here and now. They don't want to go back into the past. And so, although you might have some presents that you bought for them, don't be surprised if they're not receptive to receiving them, because to them, that kind of associates with the loyalty conflict that they were being caught in between the alienated parent and you. And remembering that we get tarred by the same brush as the alienator, because it's much easier not to just criticize the alienator. It's easier for the kid to criticize both parents and say you're both responsible.
Yeah.
And so that loyalty conflict is where all the pressure comes up for the child. And so when we're rebuilding the relationship, we want to do everything in our power not to put them back into that kind of perceived place of insecurity. So, you know, just trade care. Bank accounts seem to be much easier because it's like kids like cash, but like other physical presents seems to be a little bit harder for kids to sometimes accept, depending on how safe they're feeling with you and how quickly they're rebuilding the relationship. But the key is to just tread really, really gently and carefully with your children.
Okay, so now you're getting a question, a great one. I thought about buying yard signs with loving messages and put them in places where they see them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I love the idea, but I think what you do is you'll put the child under pressure because the alienated parent is bound to see them. And if they see them, so this is don't poke the bear territory. If you poke the bear, they're going to react, and the normal response is to try and put additional pressure on the kid. So the risk you run is that they say, oh, they don't really mean it, you know, that they're just putting stuff up, or they might even go and try and remove stuff themselves, but they're very likely to find a way of putting additional pressure on the kid.
Yeah.
And even if you send them a normal present, that will probably result in your child experiencing additional pressure for a period of time.
Yeah. See, this is the kind of things nobody else who's not experiencing it, they cannot believe that this would happen.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
why would they do something like that? Who does that?
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah. 22 million people. Well, no, not 22 million people who are affected by this, but yeah, I mean, it's like millions of alienators in the States alone are doing this all the time.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. Can you tell people how to find you? Because I know our audience our clients overlap a lot.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook. I've got a group and I've got a personal page. I do some stuff on YouTube. I mean, all you have to do is put in Charlie McCready. It'll pop up, which is MCCREADY. We're also on LinkedIn, and we do a bit on Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place. And we've got a website, which is charliemccready.com.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is certainly not going to be the last conversation we have.
I hope not.
We keep talking about a series. We just have to get ourselves organized.
Yeah. Well, maybe we just book something in immediately after this for,
Yeah.
August, and we'll book maybe just August and September, and we'll just keep on doing it.
Yes, and by the way, anyone listening, please feel free to send ideas of topics that you want to talk about under the umbrella of alienation or, coercive control, whatever you want to call it. It's real. We see it all the time ourselves. And like Charlie said, the statistics say 22 million people in America, and I think Canada alone, are experiencing this.
Yeah. I always think of parental alienation like electricity. When they first introduced electricity, people couldn't see it, so they didn't believe it.
Mm,
Gave them a hell of a shock when they experienced it.
yeah, yeah, that's
It's a good
great
analogy.
analogy. So before we end, I hope you see this. Charlie was my biggest inspiration and has been for a few years.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you very
yeah.
much. I think you're our biggest inspiration, Lisa.
Oh my God. Thank you. Anyway, Charlie, let's definitely put something on the calendar. Again, you guys, please send us any questions, topics you want to talk about. We're happy to do it.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to
All
help.
right. Talk to you
Cool.
soon.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.